All right. Hey guys, so we're joined here today for a Bridge Academy talk from our mentor, Justin Hunter. He's the founder of Graphite Docs and Graphite Publishing, and is going to talk to us today a little bit about building on the Blockstack platform. So excited to hear more, and thanks for joining us, Justin.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So I thought that I would do a little bit of background on myself, how I got into development, because I think a lot of people attending Bridge Academy are probably coming from a non-traditional background, non-software development background, kind of trying to jump into development. And that sort of mirrors my path to development and why Blockstack was so helpful in me being able to pick up decentralized apps while I was also learning to code. So I'll give you a little bit of background. As Adam said, I'm the founder of Graphite. Graphite is a secure productivity suite. So here in just a second, I'll just go ahead and show you a quick example of Graphite, and then we can look at some code examples. But I want to give you my background. So as I sort of alluded to, I'm not a developer by trade. I didn't start coding until 2 years ago. Maybe a little bit more than 2 years ago now. So when I started building Graphite, I had no idea what I was doing. I was still learning. I've been an account manager, a writer, customer experience researcher. So I've had a lot of different jobs that were not related to engineering at all, and just decided that I wanted to learn to code, started building some simple apps, and then I learned about Blockstack, and it sort of aligned with what I wanted to do at the time. So as I mentioned, I was a writer. I was finishing my degree in creative writing, and I wanted a platform where I could own all of my writing, right, and not have to worry about Google or any of these other services shutting me out of what I've created. So I started building Graphite just for myself. Blockstack was the perfect platform for that because it was allowing me to use JavaScript as I was starting to understand it, while also allowing me to own my data and have a decentralized identifier that I log in with. And so from there, I just kept building Graphite, learned a lot more along the way. Now I can comfortably call myself a developer, and Graphite is doing pretty great here. So the thing that I would say about Blockstack, the reason why I like Blockstack as a decentralized protocol or development platform, whatever you want to call it, is that you're not having to learn anything new, right? So it's not Solidity, which I'll show you. I'll do a quick comparison here in just a second when I share my screen. Solidity is great. I think writing smart contracts are great. But if you're just learning how to code and you're just learning JavaScript, jumping into something like Solidity is going to be a much steeper learning curve. So using Blockstack was helpful there. Blockstack also is focused more on the data storage side of things, giving people personal data lockers rather than decentralizing everything, right? So you've got IPFS, you've got Ethereum, those types of networks are truly decentralized in the fact that the data lives, on the varying nodes that are alive at the time. Whereas Blockstack takes the approach of each user gets a storage locker, and they can store all of their data there. But even though you're storing it on, storage locker A, somebody that you are working with might be using storage locker B. You guys can still collaborate. So that was a cool feature. Made it just really an extension of the traditional web, but kind of decentralizing the traditional web. So with that in mind, let me jump into screen sharing here. There we go. We'll just show this screen. And hopefully you guys can see Graphite. So again, Graphite is a secure productivity suite. So what you get with that is documents, file storage, contacts. Soon there's going to be some additional features, but the main focus here was documents. I'll just take you through a quick run through here. Actually, let's go ahead and pull open this file here. This is actually the Graphite privacy policy. So if you go to graphitedocs.com and go to the footer and look up the privacy policy, rather than hosting that on Netlify or having to type it up in a code editor, I went ahead and created it as a Graphite doc, made it a public document. So if we go to graphitedocs.com and if we go to the footer, Sorry about the scrolling. I know that probably looks terrible on Zoom. And we go to privacy policy. This is going to actually pull up a public version of this document that anybody can see. You're not going to be able to edit it. It's a read-only version. And it should look exactly like, as soon as it loads here, kind of slow connection with Zoom. There you go. It'll look exactly like the version that I can edit. So anytime I need to make a change to the privacy policy, I'll come in here and make my changes. So there's nothing groundbreaking here except for the fact that this is entirely encrypted until I decide to share it publicly, and it's entirely owned by me. I am in control of the storage hub. I'm in control of every piece of data. Nobody can lock me out of this. That's the power of Graphite. That's the power of what Blockstack enables. So I mentioned Solidity earlier, and I mentioned that I came into this new to coding. So I want to show you just some quick code examples of how easy it is to get started with Graphite. So this is all done in React, but this could be vanilla JavaScript. It could be in Vue. It could be in Angular, whatever you want to use, right? And I'm going to try to show you things that don't actually apply to the framework. They just apply to Blockstack and to JavaScript. Getting started with Blockstack is as simple as including the user session portion of Blockstack. They actually just recently broke it out so that you don't have to include every single piece of their entire repository. Once you have that user session, the way that I handle this is different than the way other people handle it. But once you have that, you have access to everything you need to store files and get those files back, right? So I'm just creating a constructor here. This config file, just I could go into it, but it just gives you some of the storage options. And then in my case, since I'm using React, I'm using a state management package called React-N. And so I'm just actually setting that right from the get-go as a state variable. And now I can use that anywhere in the app. So if we look at, this is just basic JavaScript, right? So I'm loading data, I'm setting up some parameters, and then I'm making my call to a function called fetch data with these parameters, right? So this is all pretty straightforward JavaScript. If we go to the fetch call, you can see the actual Blockstack specific code in action. And if you remember, I set that user session state variable, so I can go ahead and use that, get file, and if I was storing data, it would be put file, but that's all handled by Blockstack. This is all I have to do to fetch my data. Get file, give it a file name, and then the parameters object. And then the same with put file, which I don't have that example pulled up here, but I can just explain it. It's literally user session.put file, file name, and then the parameters object. So it's really simple to understand. It's really simple to get started with. You could probably build a very basic Blockstack app in an hour if you wanted to. So this helped me get going as I was learning JavaScript. If we compare that to Solidity, again, Solidity is great, but if you're a new developer, this just flat out didn't work for me, right? Solidity is almost a mashup of JavaScript, TypeScript, and a little bit of C#, if you've done C#, right? So let's imagine I'm a new developer. I'm learning JavaScript. I'm just now learning about constructors. Well, in Solidity, that's actually struct, right? Which you can kind of parse and figure out what that means. But if you are not even sure what a constructor is and not even sure what a public versus a private variable versus strongly typed variables versus not, Solidity starts to get a little bit complicated. So I did look at Solidity. I did look at Ethereum when I wanted to start building Graphite for myself. And Blockstack just made the most sense for me. Really, it's Blockstack is more of a engine to well, actually think of it like this. So the way I like to think of it is you've got your React, you've got your Angular, your Vue, you've got all these frameworks. Then you go to NPM and you're starting to get packages to help make your life easier. That's how I think of Blockstack. In fact, all of Blockstack's packages are available on NPM. And I tend to think of it as more of developer tooling, open source tools to make my life easier. And I just happen to get that benefit of added decentralization to things. I know I talked about a lot there, but I wanted to make sure I left time still for any questions that you guys have. I'm not sure if any of you have used Blockstack, have looked at Blockstack at all, but I've been closing in on 2 years of playing around with Blockstack. So happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Yeah, that was great, Justin. Thanks for sharing. I actually didn't know the full part of you coming to it from not a development background. So that's
yeah.
Cool. The question that I had, I'll kick it off here, was sort of, you mentioned some of the initial advantages that you saw in using a platform like Blockstack, and this was even before, the platform was very mature. So, I'm curious kind of what has changed over those few years, and, what are maybe some things that have been added that were recent developments that you felt like were even more sort of like reasons to use it. And then on the flip side, what are some of the challenges still that you observe in building apps on Blockstack in particular that you see as kind of potentially limiting further types of apps from getting developed, and how do you view those sort of trade-offs today?
Yeah, good. That's a good question, because there's a lot there. So obviously it was very limited when I first started, right? So as you said, they've matured over the last 2 years. But when I first started, when I started building Graphite, there was no way for you to collaborate with somebody else. They call it multiplayer storage. That didn't exist at the time. So probably a month in, they launched the alpha version of multiplayer storage, which is the thing that allows you, to be using AWS while your friend is using Azure, and you guys can collaborate on a document, or at least share something back and forth. So that was a limitation early on that they sort of improved on. I won't say they solved it, because multiplayer storage was still very asynchronous. If you wanted any sort of real-time collaboration, you still have to drop in a WebSocket server, which I did here with Graphite to get that real-time collaboration. I made that optional for people as they're sharing. But I would say that the biggest improvement they've made here recently is this Radix framework that they've come out with. Now, right now it's highly centralized. So for everybody out there that's looking for pure decentralization, this is not for them, but it's a step in the right direction. And what it does is the Radix framework just puts a database layer on top of the Gaia storage, which is Blockstack's decentralized storage. So every user still has their own data bucket. All of their data is still owned and controlled, but then there's an indexing server that will create that database layer. And the benefit of that is you get a little bit better performance, right? Graphite doesn't make use of that, but Graphite Publishing does, because when you're pulling up a blog post, you kind of need that to be quick. That's one of the benefits, but the long-term benefit of that is the concept of access control lists. With smart contracts, you've already got that built in. You've got a whole thing around access control. With Blockstack, there's really no access control lists. If you're trying to build an enterprise app where one group of users within your company have access to certain files, while another group doesn't have access, there's no key revocation, there's no key rotation, there's nothing like that that you need for creating true user permissions. Radix fixes that. So this first iteration of Radix that Blockstack released gives you that first step towards access control list. The cool thing about it that I think will solve the problem of decentralization is they are trying to get that off of traditional server database structure and get it onto their Atlas network, which is their peer-to-peer network. Once that happens, then that you get over the hurdle for everybody that is worried about having any piece of their app be centralized. But it's a big step in the right direction, and I think they're going to continue to improve the platform.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's exciting. I'd heard about that, but it was good to kind of get your thoughts. So, you guys have any other questions here for Justin? Anyone else on the line?
Yeah, I do have one question. Hi, Justin. Hi. This is Shyam here.
Hi.
So first of all, I would like to say thanks. Yeah, this is a good application.
Thank you.
And my question is to you, like you have built this application, Graphite Docs, right? So I assume this is kind of putting all the documents into the one kind of portal there everybody can go and just refer, right? So my question is, how do you protect the copyright part? Like somebody wants to copy it and use in another application. So what the mechanism you have used?
Are you talking about the code base itself?
No, I'm talking about the document. Let's say this document is access to everybody, right? So if I go and copy your document content and if I want to use it, so how do you protect that part?
Well, if you're making a document public, then you are inherently giving that to the world, right? So Graphite makes no claims to your document. We're not going to protect copyright. That's for you to do as a user. It's exactly like if you use Dropbox Paper or Google Docs. If you're sharing a file with somebody, anybody can go and copy that file and do whatever they want with it. It's up to you to manage the sharing of your document. For something that's not public, though, those are all encrypted. That's not available. Like every one of these that you see a lock on, these are encrypted with an encryption key that I own personally as a user, and I'm the only one that's going to be able to access that document. If somebody somehow got into my storage hub and tried to pull up that file, they're going to see just an encrypted blob. They're not going to see any data because they don't have my encryption or my decryption key.
So I can assume this works similar to Google Docs or Dropbox mechanism, right?
Correct.
Okay.
As far as sharing, I think that's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yep. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so yeah, that's from my side.
Yeah. Good question.
I had actually had another, if anyone else doesn't have one yet, I'll have another sort of follow-up to that. I guess, you've since sort of rolling out Graphite Docs published, is it Graphite Publishing is the other app now? And it sort of seems to be, to me, like from the outside, like a response to platforms like Medium and such that are out there that are sort of taking more of a closed stance to, their ownership over the content. And how do you see that sort of playing out, or this sort of tension that exists between these closed platforms like Medium now and solutions like Graphite Publishing now starting to come out? Like, have you seen people move over from Medium at this point to use it, or is that something that's starting to happen?
Yeah, people are coming from Medium. They're coming from Squarespace. So I agree with you. The whole Medium is sort of becoming a closed ecosystem when it started as a open ecosystem. It's a big problem. But beyond that, if you're not running your own WordPress site, which has its own problems, right? You do not own, well, I'll say this, if you're not running a WordPress site or a ghost blogging site, then you don't own any of the content, regardless of whatever the privacy policy is from Squarespace or Medium or any of these other providers. You don't own any of that content. And there's clearly been this reawakening of people wanting to own their data. And I think it's in response to privacy violations. It's in response to deplatforming. It's in response to a lot of things. So that's driven interest in Graphite Publishing, which is still very much a beta product. But that was absolutely why I started building it. It was a little bit different from Graphite Docs, right? Like I could have just had it so that you write a document, and then you decide, is this a document? Is this a blog post? That felt weird to me. So I went ahead and spun out publishing as its own thing. And as I was building that, I decided that, one of the things that is missing from hosted blogging platforms, aside from data ownership, is the ability to actually design your site, right? In simple HTML, you go into WordPress and you can design your site, sure, right there on the spot, but you have to have a basic understanding of PHP and that sort of thing. So I wanted to make it really simple for people that understood HTML to go and modify their site to look exactly like they want. So if we pull up, I think I'm still sharing here, publishing sites. This will be the Graphite blog here. Just a second. And if we went and looked at somebody else's site, like I've got a friend that is running a, see if this is going to not work because I'm sharing, of course. There we go. I've got a friend. So this is totally designed in Graphite Publishing. I didn't write any code outside of this to create this design. But if I can't remember his Blockstack ID, so I can't pull up that site. But I've got a friend running another blog on Graphite Publishing, and he did his own design in there. There's a couple of templates in there to make it easy for people. But again, I think the power is differentiating from the way that traditional hosted blog platforms do things.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Guys, Prashant, question, perhaps? Gonna start calling on people.
It was a really nice conversation. And I really like your beard, by the way. I'm a big beard fan.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. So my question goes like, I'm someone who does blogging and all. I'm a daily blogger. I write like one blog every day. So I have a blog site, and my blog site is presently on Tumblr. Okay.
Yep.
I was planning to switch it on WordPress, but then in the process, I learned a lot of things. So it's not that easy to make your site on WordPress, but if you can spend some money and buy a theme for yourself, then like it's not much of a hustle over there. Okay,
Sure.
So what's the benefit you get when you do it with, say, Graphite? Because WordPress can be a bit simple if you just go out there, put your website. I just had to import my blog. It just took 5 minutes to import my whole blog onto WordPress from Tumblr,
Yep.
and then buying a theme and just putting it out there, and it's like pretty cool. So
I
what's
would
the advantage of using Graphite?
Yeah, so as of right now, I would say there's two main benefits. One is if you're not looking to deploy your own site, right? So you could go and fork the Graphite Publishing code base, deploy it, and have it run on a custom domain. If you don't care about that, then you're up and running faster than using WordPress, right? Because with WordPress, you have to go and deploy your WordPress instance somewhere. And most of the hosting platforms, they make it easy, but you still have to do it, right? With Graphite Publishing, you're literally signing in with your Blockstack ID and you're going. That's the first one. The second one is every single draft that you create is encrypted with encryption keys that you own. So that's the big difference. Is if you're creating a draft post, I'm not sure exactly how and if there is any encryption in WordPress's draft posts, but every post that you create in Graphite Publishing is in fact encrypted, and it's encrypted with an encryption key that you are the only one that has access to. So, people could use that as an internal knowledge base, right? Like if a company wanted to just keep their private knowledge behind the admin portal, they have all of that totally encrypted. Their employees can go and access those publication or those posts and not have to worry about anybody ever being able to see that content.
Right. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool, guys. I think we have time for maybe one last question here. So let's make it a good one. And I got a question as well ready to go if no one else is ready. But do we have any other questions from the audience?
Hey, can I ask one?
Yeah, go for it.
How do you plan to make money out of it?
Okay, this is going to be my question too.
Perfect. Yeah, so you guys can merge those together. So that is coming hopefully here starting this summer. I'm actually in the process of building the enterprise version of Graphite. So that is going to include all of those access controls that I was talking about and more. So right now with Graphite, you can just share one-to-one with contacts that are, that are using Blockstack already. But businesses don't want to do that, right? They want to be able to create a main business account. Then you're going to have, in a very large business, you're going to have managers over each department that need to be able to segment those users from the rest of the users. So that is going to be the base skeleton, I'll say, of Graphite's enterprise offering. But the real sales point there for businesses is you could go and do this on Dropbox Paper to a certain extent. You could go and pay for this on Google's G Suite, but in either case, you're giving every piece of your most private data for your company to those companies. So Graphite's going to be looking to solve that and charge for that. That will absolutely not be free. The free product will remain the same as it is now, but the money-making side of this is selling to enterprises.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Cool.
just one last quick question, if you
Sure.
allow
Yes.
me. Yeah, this really intrigues me. Like presently, we are not used to paying for services, right?
Yep.
We don't pay for anything. We get free stuff everywhere, and we are quite like happy using it. And all of a sudden, when blockchain comes on, and everyone says that okay, your data is like valuable, and you got to pay to us to keep guard to that.
Yep.
Do you think that people will be like taking on to that idea and start paying for the privacy, for their own privacy?
I have two sort of answers to that. I hope that they will, but if you're asking, do I actually believe that they will? No, I hope they will. I don't believe people will just start up and paying for services that they've been conditioned to think are free. Now remember, these aren't actually free services. Your data is being sold, right? So that's the price that you're paying for those services. But everybody's been conditioned and brainwashed into believing that it is free, and that's going to be a hard thing to break. So that's why Graphite's business model is not to try to make consumer, like the free users, start paying money. It's to make the enterprises, the businesses that are already paying money, pay money to something that's more secure, right? Like they're already paying for Google G Suite. There's a vast number of companies that are paying for G Suite and really should not be. There's this Dropbox business where everybody's just paying to trust Dropbox to manage all of their data with encryption keys that Dropbox owns. So I think there's a enterprise marketplace that needs to be tapped first. And in the meantime, I hope that all of these people that are using free services start to realize that it's not really free and start to get more comfortable with paying.
Right. Thank you.
Cool. Well, guys, I think we got to let Justin go here, but this was an awesome presentation, Justin. Thanks for taking these questions. I hope, it was fun for you as well. So we really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and thank you guys for your questions. This was great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.